Good morning. How is everybody? Good morning, Michael. How are
Morning, Jenny.
you?
Good. No, you got your audio fixed, I should say.
My audio.
Yeah.
Yes, it was all my fault because, women and all of that.
Yeah, it was an underlying computer issue on the inside we had no idea about.
No, but I mean, thank God we did get it figured out. So we shouldn't have any problem today with
For
the
now
echo.
on.
Well, yes, if you'll do the right thing anyway.
Yeah. Multitasking, it's an issue.
It's a booger, you got to stay up with this stuff.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make mention that yesterday we uploaded a video, which was a special report, and Rope is going to be doing special reports. And we did a special report with a lady named T.S. Smith, whose daughter experienced a mental health crisis. And in trying to get help for her child, she basically found out that she would end up losing her parental rights. And she did, in fact, lose them at one point in time. And that what she was doing, where she was finding help with the psychologists and psychiatrists that were trying to help her, she was being offered gender affirming care. And I don't think people understand what happens in a mental health crisis. And then what happens is they accidentally, obviously, because nobody does it on purpose. I mean, you have a mental health crisis, and then you find yourself in positions that are just untenable. And this is kind of what happened with T.S. Smith. And so we'd really love it. It's on our YouTube channel. It's on our Rumble channel. Please go and find a video and watch it. And then this afternoon, Michael and I will be talking with Dr. Robert Mather, and that conversation will be on our Patreon channel. So make sure that you go find us on Patreon, where you can just find us by going to patreon.com and then looking us up at Reclaim Oklahoma Parent Empowerment. But he's a nationally known psychologist. He'll be on with us talking about what happened with TS. And I think parents are going to want to see that. So keep that in mind. So anything else this morning, Michael?
No, I'm glad to have Karmin on here. I think she's literally the embodiment of an American, an Oklahoman, a patriot, a fighter, someone with moral Christian values. I mean, and I'm so glad that she is who she is at her core, and she's not going to let the establishment get away with what they do. I mean, I'm just so happy to give Karmin, that we can give Karmin a platform just to let people know, because people have no idea, Jenny, how deep, you started kind of with dark money in your side. Karmin's gone in a different direction, and it is just mind blowing, the corruption. I, I'm glad to have her on here.
I am too. So let's bring her on so that we can actually talk to her in person. Good morning. How are you,
Good
Karmin?
morning. I'm
It's
well.
so good
How are
to
you?
see you.
Good to
Well,
see you
we're not
guys.
echoing, and that's a good thing. Because we've had that problem where we just echo and people go, you're having problems here. So let's talk first about you are a member, you live in Logan County, right?
I do.
And you decided to run for office.
House District 31.
So explain, why did you decide? I mean, what happened there?
Well, in 2020, we had a rhino in office, and that was an interesting race in itself. He was from the town, and a lot of people personally knew him. Do you mind if I change the background real quick? This isn't.
No.
It's kind of looking funny.
We just operate on the fly anyway, right, Michael?
Okay.
That's part of the
Right.
reason I think people watch us, is to find out
That's
how
better.
badly we're going to screw up next time.
And my first campaign was in 2020 during all of the lockdown and COVID, and I got 33% of the vote. Well, everything that I said about that legislator at the time was pretty accurate, and his scores were low in all of the conservative index. Well, he decided actually not to run again. And so it was an open seat, and I started in July a year before. And later on, 2 other candidates entered the race, and I knocked around 12,000 doors myself. I did them in rounds. I did 4 rounds, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoy getting to connect with the people in the district, and I got to learn a lot. But most of the learning that I didn't necessarily come from door knocking. It came from the experience itself. I was up against some very good candidates, and there's a whole new, not new, it's very old, but a whole other world that is a part of Oklahoma politics, and that's the consultant game. And that played a big factor, I believe, in the House District 31 race. I did not have one. My 2 opponents did. And I think one of my opponents learned a lot about that game as well. But
now, wait,
the research...
Let's back up, though, because a lot of people don't know what consultants are. So what are you talking about in terms of a consultant? Explain that.
I'll do my best, but it's kind of they kind of do whatever. They can do mailers. They can tell you this is good advice, this is bad advice. They can do surveys, polls, and I've learned even more about campaign consultants, political consultants in this last year, and all of the research that I've done for my website as well. And so I kind of get into some of that on my website, and I'll be able to discuss that a little bit more in depth. But it's unless you have one, you don't specifically know what they do. But if you're looking at someone who does, you can look at their expenditures, and what you'll see is strategic campaign advice, direct mailers, survey. And so they do things like that. But I believe that, in the conversations of the political advisement or strategic advisement, they're obviously talking about the campaign. But a while ago, there was one in particular that was charged with certain things, and I think it got expunged. And so they're not allowed to have their candidate meet with these other PACs or dark money groups. And so it's just an interesting thing when you see a bunch of these mailers come from these PACs with these connections that look familiar. And I think that had things to do in my race. I'm not necessarily speaking factually. I'm speaking opinion and just drawing conclusions. When you see certain names on mailers and then you go and you look up, well, who leads that PAC, and you see relational connections, or when you look at lobbyist gifts and who went to lunch with who, and those kinds of connections and names pop up, it's a pretty interesting thing. Now, obviously, I don't have any direct communications as in what was said at those meetings or anything, but it is a fascinating thing to, like I said, see who had lunch with who and what time of day or what time and day, and then to see certain mailers drop from certain groups within a specific time frame. So you can kind of piece things together and have an idea, but distinctly and specifying, it's not so much. And so that's how, things get done. That sounds kind of vague, but it is kind of vague.
Well, so really, Karmin, consultants will ethically do the things that a candidate cannot do. They'll kind of go around all those borders and boundaries, and they'll go ahead and establish relationships and do the things that a candidate, would normally not have access or be able to do.
Right. And one in particular years ago sent emails to all of the superintendents and said, this is what you need to do. And that's a very strange thing. So, and once what you're going to see as my website comes up are patterns, and certain ones in particular. When a consultant has nearly 50s or, between 40 and 50% of our Republican legislators on his client list at one time, that's a strange thing. And they all tend to look similar in their voting records. Not saying that there's any type of collusion, but I do find that it's a very fascinating phenomenon.
So I'm going to share my screen so that you can kind of see what I'm looking at here. But this is a mailer that was put out in your campaign, Rhino Karmin Grider, fake, phony, false.
Wow.
So you should be ashamed of yourself, Karmin. I mean, how dare you run for public office as a fake and a phony and being false? There's one over here that calls this candidate nuts. There's one that was my candidate that said that he didn't.
Oh, looks like Jenny's got a little freeze there. Let's give her a second, see if she comes back on here. Well, let me see. I don't know if we can take that down. But anyway, Karmin, I think, people really need to understand all those intimate relationships that are kind of behind closed doors. All right, Jenny's back, but I can't wait to see. I've seen your presentation, but I can't wait to see it again, especially for all of our folks. Just seeing that inside track of where the money's being spent, who's spending it, all those kind of inside relationships that people have no idea about.
Well, and so Karmin, do you want me to go ahead and put up your slides?
Yeah, I want to throw in something. What you just showed me
Okay.
gave me a really cool idea. And what's awesome, Michael, is since you did see my presentation a few months ago, there are some things that I am in the process of adding. One is lobbyist gifts, and I've added the Supreme Court, and there's a couple other factors I'm going to include. They're not quite up yet. I've been working on more behind the scenes, but Jenny, what you just showed me gave me a really awesome idea. This is so much fun.
What?
I can't wait.
Tell me. What?
I'll explain it. You can go ahead and put this first slide
Okay.
up and I'll explain it.
Okay. All right.
So what you're looking at, I'm not going to reveal this candidate directly or this legislator directly. I'll leave a little bit of mystery. But see where it says campaign website? I included that. I included the occupation and the campaign consultants. Those are three things that I chose to include in their bio that I've not seen another organization or what have you do that. And that's very intentional. And the reason I include the campaign website is because they say things on their campaign. Like I talked about transparency, and this whole website is fulfilling a campaign promise. And so you'll be able to go directly to their website to see if they made any campaign promises, and then go back to this page, and then you'll be able to see if they hold to that by their money, their votes, and their bills. And so when I was looking at all of those mailers, I thought, hey, now how cool would it be to include some mailers that have campaign promises on them, such as, fiscal conservative. And then anytime they have a vote that pops up for corporate welfare, post them side by side. There's just so much you can do.
Well, and also just for a point of clarification, just for people that don't know, everything that you've compiled, this is all public data. There's nothing that is private or you're just conjecturing in. This is all publicly available. You're just putting it all in one place,
Yep.
and making it easy to read and compare.
Yes, it's all public. There are hyperlinks absolutely everywhere. So you just hover over any of the headlines or labels or words or whatever, and you'll probably find one. I chose not to leave them underlined because it looked funny. But lots of surprises all over, and I'll be updating it regularly when it is live, because there's so much data to organize for each one. When I do roll it out, I'll have 3 legislators, and hopefully all the Supreme Court justices will be done. And so from there on, I'll be updating it daily. And as I figure out how to illustrate other factors, I'll incorporate those. But this is going to be something absolutely just beautiful. Like a political masterpiece for Oklahoma.
Well,
do you
so
want me
let
to
me
go
get the
ahead and
bottom.
explain what you're looking at, or what were you? Sorry.
Yes, but let me back up just a second, because I want to make sure, because I found when I first started talking about dark money, people don't get it. They don't know what dark money is. They don't know how it's influencing elections. They're not understanding this. And so let me just back up and say this. Dark money is money that is usually put into a 501c4. Everybody knows kind of what a 501c3 is, right? I mean, it's just a charitable organization. 501c4 is an IRS designation that allows nonprofit organizations to be politically active. But the trick with the C4 is that you don't have to disclose who the donors are to that C4. So it could be anybody that's putting money in that C4. And then they take that money and they buy what I just showed you, which are these cards that come in the mail that call Carmen Greider, I'm reading them again, fake, a phony, and false, and Jake Merrick, a fake, and that they put the money into that. And then if you look on the mailer to determine who it is that sent it, because they have to say who sent it, sometimes it's just a political consulting house. Camp is a political consulting house. They did a lot of mailers last year, and some of it did come from dark money. I have all of that information on our website. And as a matter of fact, that's how I found you, Karmin, wasn't it? Because I started, talking about this and you were like on the same page. And so what you've done is you've gone back and looked at all of the political, now is it political candidates or elected officials, both of them?
Well, I have the data for all of them, but what I'm presenting is just the elected officials.
But that's a lot of work, girl.
Yeah, so you could ask about any candidate who's ran since 2015, and I have all of their data for a statewide office.
And that's important because the people that run and the people that we elect, sometimes we don't know the whole truth about the people we elect, do we? Because we believe these cards that people send out, or we just don't take the time to look these people up and we have no idea who's running them or put the money into them. And what you're doing is huge. It's huge. I sound like Trump. Huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. Okay. Do you need me to go to the next slide, or do you want to just talk about the one that we're sitting on right now?
I'll talk about this one. So I list certain particulars in their bio that you would see: party, term, limitation, contact information, etc. And like I said, I included the occupation, the campaign website, and the campaign consultants intentionally. And look for, when you're on this website, look for repetition and
you mean like the same political consultants over and over again?
That could be
right?
one, yeah. Or if you see things, and I'm not saying I've drawn conclusions between these two's or a relationship, but this is his occupation. He's an attorney. Look at the kind of legislation that is produced, and you can look at where money comes from and things like that. And I'm not saying that there are specific connections, but those are things to keep in mind as you're looking for connections. But also at the same time, if they have an occupation in a certain field, then yeah, they are going to have more legislation typically in that field because they have an expertise. That also doesn't mean that there's nothing there. It just means what you find is going to be what you find. So I did choose to include that, and because if I am a conservative who likes to hold my legislator accountable and supported. I mean, I ran for an office like that. I expected that to come towards me. And if I am working for someone, what do they want to know? What would I want to know about an employee of mine? That's what I included in this. Show me.
Let's back up. You just said what I would like to know about an employee of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I like that because we just talked about that the other day, and the fact that the people that we elect, it's like we hired them. They work for us. But see, we keep forgetting about that, or we decide, oh, well, they sound great, I'll vote for them, but then they'll do a great job. I'm not going to worry about what they're doing, right? So you elect somebody, let's say you even go out and vote, and the number of people who vote in this state is ridiculous. It's a small percentage of the actual population. So let's say you even do go vote, okay? And you go in and you vote. do you ever check up on the guy that you voted for? Do you ever look at his voting record? Do you ever call him up and say, hey, how's it going? Do you even know who he is, really? Have you ever met him in person? Aren't these things we should know about people we hire? I mean, because it's not just a business, right, Karmin? I mean, these people are running things. They're creating legislation that affect our daily lives. Why don't we know
And
who these
after
people
20
are?
Right. And after 2020, they decided we now have people in office who get to decide whether we have to stay in our homes or
Yep.
put something in our body that we don't want. And I think it's just you don't know. I'm jumping ahead to one of my pie charts, but
Okay, should I go forward?
I'll just keep going with this because this sets it all up. So I include everything that you as an employer would want to know about your employee. Whenever I door knock, that's what I would tell people is this is your opportunity to interview me to determine whether or not you want to hire me. And that is exactly how it is. And so basically what I have done here is I have compiled everything that you would want to know about your legislator employee. And it starts with that bio. You'll see the occupation that they have, their campaign website. You can click there and see if they've made any promises. And here's an example. A lot of so-called conservative Republicans in Oklahoma say things such as, I won't be beholden to special interest groups. Well, if they have that on their website, it's to them. You will be able to scroll down and determine for yourself whether they upheld that promise or not, such as this one. You can look at this pie chart, and this is up to date through 2022. Now, I have the 2023 finances that I got to update this with. And this guy has 63.7% special interest contributions and 36.3 in individual contributions. So you can make your determination.
Who owns this guy then?
And that's the question. And so go ahead and go on to the next slide that goes a little bit more in detail. This is the industries that are a part of those special interest groups. So you'll see unions, financial services.
Wow.
It sure is. And wow. I go more in depth, but I don't show it. So under health, you'll see services, professionals, like healthcare groups, different things like that.
Health is in the blue on the left side.
Yeah,
as you're looking.
That lighter blue one. And under energy, you'll see electrical utilities, oil and gas, different things like that. I'm gonna try and figure out a way that doesn't inundate the eye, that can delineate some of these industries and what it is. Unknown, that was if I couldn't find any type of trail. They don't have a website. They don't have a classification on this source that I use, some of them are kind of hard, and some of them have similar names. So to figure out, which is which was challenging at times. But
let's stop before you go on. Let's stop. So let's look in case people aren't able to see this. So the brown, which is at the top, more like 10 to noon, is unions. So that's 20.3% of money in elections in Oklahoma comes from unions.
For this guy, 20.3% of this guy's money comes from unions of his special interest. That special interest part of the earlier pie chart, 20.3% of his special interest money comes from unions. I think she froze.
Yeah, I think she's frozen. I'm going to make that
shocked.
full screen just so people can zoom in there and see it a little more clear, Karmin.
Okay.
But
and this is
are you still on there?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Did she
Yeah,
disappear?
Jenny dropped out. But keep going. She'll be coming back in.
Is she the one that controls the slides?
No, I can move it.
Oh.
You want me to go to the next one?
Okay, yeah, go on to the next one. So this is the next section. What I do is every group that contributes to a candidate, I research. And if they adhere to ESG, environmental social governance, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, then I list them. And I don't just list them, I also link them to their pages to show you that they adhere to that. And for example, under law firms, on the next slide, I have Phillips Murrah. So you can go to the next slide. And it takes you straight to their diversity, equity, and inclusion page. And then I also link the Pfizer one, so you can go to the next slide. And I link it to Project Veritas's undercover video of the Pfizer executive bragging about mutating COVID, and how COVID's a cash cow, and they're going to be making money off this for a while. So all of those that are listed are linked to some sort of woke evidence or proof, what have you, of what the ideology is, or at least that they have been coerced to. And you would be surprised how many oil companies are caught up in it as well. It's like they're shooting themselves more than in the foot. They're almost cutting their leg off. Because in that is the climate change and net zero by 2030 or whatever date it is, and carbon capturing and all of those ridiculous things that they think are going to save the climate that's not really changing at all. It's a money-making industry. Then you can go on to the next slide. So the first pie chart is in-state versus out-of-state contributions. And that one's going to be pretty healthy, at least that I've seen from our state officials. The majority does come from within the state, and that's good. Now, that doesn't take into consideration, Jenny, all of your research in the dark money and the independent expenditures that do come from out of state. So that pie chart's going to be pretty good. The one on the navy blue and the gold one, that one right there is one of the most important things on this website. And I actually am updating them to where they don't include special interests within the district. And so what I'm capturing with this pie chart is that legislators' actual constituent, those that can vote for him or her within the district, the money that comes from those people. And so what I included in this one is I did include a special interest group that is registered in his district. And so when I update this, I'm going to take that out, and the percentage that you're going to be looking at that comes from voters within his district is going to be about, I think, 1.7.
Wow.
So 1.7% of all of his contributions come from voters within his own district. And all of the other money.
So I'm just, I want to hammer that home so long as I'll stay on the network, because I don't know why I keep going bye-bye. I want to hammer that home. So let's talk about that just a second. Why is it that we would allow a candidate to accept money from outside of their district? Because really that candidate is an employee of the people in the district in which they're elected. I mean, am I wrong about that?
No.
So how is it then that only just slightly more than 1% of the campaign contributions for this particular person came from within their district? I mean, should our minds not be blown about that? Should we not be having some kind of a fit about that?
We should. And I had a lot of psychology and behavioral sciences in my bachelor's. And I think what we're looking at times in matters or circumstances like this is, I think it's groupthink. So when you
Yeah.
get a bunch of fancy flyers that look expensive, then the people that receive them think, oh, he's got a lot of money, so he's got a lot of support, or she, or whomever, whatever. And so they just automatically think that, people like them, and they're isolated in their homes away from information. And the websites that have this information on them are very hard to navigate, and that is why I have compiled this website, is because I figured out how to navigate them, and everybody needs to know. So there is no more information isolation. And when you see this, it's going to pull the curtain back, and you're going to realize, holy cow, like, what kind of support do they really have? And when they say, oh, well, and here's something that I had to delineate too, you would be surprised at the number of campaigns that were propped up by their own money, which is cool.
Oh, yeah.
Donald Trump did that, but what he also had was the individual contributions and support. And now that candidate could say, well, I wanted them to save their money. But at the same time, it's kind of like, enlisting that type of support is critical. And if people aren't giving, what does that say? And I think 90% of my donations came from within the district I was running for. And this time around, I had, go ahead.
Well, but that speaks to exactly what we're talking about. And it brings to mind an elected official in Payne County, and a friend of ours, Bryce Chaffin, ran against his legislator, and that legislator put a bunch of his own money into his reelection campaign, but then also received a lot of money outside of the district and did a lot of these mailers that we were just showing at the beginning there, talking Bryce down and talking the candidate up. So then who really has the best interests of that district's people at heart then? Is it the guy who just put in his own money that had other people from outside the district fund his campaign?
Right. And also, I'll throw this in there too. What happens frequently is the candidate will put so much of their own money into the campaign, and then special interests will come in and make donations. And then after the primary is won, they'll really lay it on. And then with that money, the candidate will pay themselves back.
Yeah.
So did they really spend their own money on the campaign, or did they just buy time and then get paid back? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And I think this is kind of, Jenny and Karmin, this is the kind of pinnacle of information that people need to know. They need to know, are people being supported monetarily in their own district, or is it just a ton of money coming in a political means to just overthrow that district? And
yes. So in the slide with all of the industries, you got to see part of the out of district funding that they receive in their campaigns. But if you go ahead and go one more forward from that slide that had the 2 pie charts on it, I'll show you one more component that's missing that is absolutely huge. It's going to be the expenditures right there. So in the green, it says funds contributed to other candidates. And back on the expenditures page.
Did you move that? Maybe.
I'm sorry, guys. It knocked me off again. Sorry.
Okay. That one right there. So in the green, it says funds contributed to other candidates. This guy's total amount from 2015 to 2022 June, the amount of money from his campaign funds that he's contributed to other races, which include incumbents and non-incumbents, is $259,900. Actually, that's up to date. That's to 2023. I'm halfway through this part of the profile and updating it. So sitting legislators from other districts are funneling money into other districts. So I can scroll through any candidate and I'll see all of the different candidate campaigns that have contributed to him or her. And a lot of times there's like 7 or 8, or more. And that is out of district money. But not only that, what is so upsetting is that they're already in a position. And rather than allowing the people in the district to choose who they want to send, these legislators are choosing who they want to come in. And my opinion, I don't think that that's right. I don't believe that within the state, if you're already in there, I don't think you should be deciding or having any say in who's chosen within another district. That needs to be left up to the people in the district. And I don't believe there's going to be any legislation that would change that, because these guys are the ones making the policy. But I think this is going to make a lot of people upset, because I don't want a rhino injecting money into my district. 31 is conservative, super conservative. And that did happen in this last race. We had other legislators contributing. And while it is their money and they can choose and whatnot, I do believe that this is something that should change and needs to. Do I think it will? Well, absolutely not.
And there's probably no cap on that for them to contribute to another campaign.
There is a cap. It's the same cap.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, there is. But that's not the point. I mean, that is, of all of the things that we're wanting to bring to the Ethics Commission, and one of the things, and let's not forget, Karmin, that we tried valiantly to find legislators to run legislation to put, to stop a lot of this nonsense. And we have elucidated that. I mean, here's what needs to change. Here's what needs to change. Here's what needs to change. We have like 6 different rules that need to change with the Ethics Commission in order to cut out some of the nonsense that you've been talking about this morning. And yet we couldn't get a legislator. I mean, we got people who said that they would run it, but then it never went anywhere. And you're just exactly right. Legislators, people are not going to vote against their own self-interest. I mean, only people with really, really huge a sense of self and morality are going to be able to do that. And it's just a sad thing to say that we don't really have a large number of those in the legislature, because most of the ones that are in there are benefiting from this system. And you're exactly right. And I would be offended too. So let's say I give you, Karmin, let's say I gave you money, because our districts touch, and it does make some sense. So let's say I gave you money for your campaign, and then you get elected, and then you turn around and you give money to another person who's also running. but I didn't give that money to them, or I would have given that to them. I gave that to you. I mean, it's just such the system is totally screwed up. And you're exactly right. We can't have legislators determining who's going to be in, because they'll buddy up. And that's how you get coalitions that go against the people who elected them, are these little coalitions that these legislators form. So, good for you. Honestly, good for you.
Well, right. And also, who determines whether certain agencies in the government get funded and how much salaries are?
Yeah.
It's a funny thing. So that is another slice in that special interests out of district pie chart. And and as you wrap your brain around what that particular chart shows, it just you'll get more and more indignant. So to move on from that and to continue to demonstrate the rest of the website, on this particular section, you can go back to the one that I was just on, and I'll hit the rest of these boxes. These are what campaign funds are used for. Travel, I have under that hotels and transportation, and I want to draw your attention to the hotels total. That's about $24,000. Now there's some hairs that I'm splitting in this, and so I haven't done my last thorough check on this particular one. But there, look at where some of these hotels are, and I also link these to their hotel website, so you get to see the fancy hotels that they stay in, like the Omni Nashville and the where's the one in Hawaii? There was it's the top one, the Hilton Hawaiian Village Waikiki Beach Resort. For a legislator conference. Wow. Isn't that fascinating? And then under transportation, that's obviously airlines, Ubers, and limos. Under fund spent on consultants, you will get to see, like I said, look for repetition and patterns. Campaign advocacy management professionals / AH strategies and majority design. That's all one guy. And that's the total for that. AH is an older consulting agency. I don't believe it's in operation anymore. But the founder or one of the partners in that started campaign advocacy management professionals, and that same person also has majority designs, and the money's phenomenal because, like I said, a number of legislators use the same consultants: James Martin Company, Signal Mountain Associates, Marathon Precision Strategy Group. And when you total that up, look at that number. And when I did my second campaign, I did not use a consultant. I did the first time, and that was a mistake. I found that I could get a mailer out to 3,000 people for just a little over $3,000. And that eliminated whatever they need that other 2,000 for. Obviously, they got to get paid if they're a consultant. But the thing that people got to understand, and they're starting to figure this out at the national level too. I saw this after the 2022 red wave that didn't happen, that was supposed to happen, was that people were starting to say, what's interesting is these consultants go from one candidate to another, and they don't care who they run. They don't even care to win because they get paid regardless. And that's what these candidates got to start putting together, especially the grassroots candidates. Talk to people who have ran. It's a waste of money. And you don't know when it is someone who's actually a rhino trying to scuttle your campaign. And I heard that that had likely happened on a number of grassroots campaigns, is they found
Yeah,
out that their consultant was actually working against them. And when
correct.
I was talking with the one that I had for, is it 3 years ago, some of the things that he would share with me, I was just like, that's actually really a bad idea, And as I started to make more and more of the decisions myself, and things were turning around just a little bit, I realized that if I'm outdoor knocking, I know my district. I know what's going to connect with them. I know how to communicate with them. And I only did one round that time around. And so this second campaign that I did, this most recent one, that's what I went by. I went by what the people told me, and that's what I put on my flyers. And they did have substance on them. They weren't just bullet points, and people appreciated that. I would see stacks. People would save stacks of these mailers, all of them from every candidate, and then they would read them, and they appreciated how I could discuss policy on a flyer. And they did have more content on them, but people appreciated that. And that's something that a consultant will tell you is, oh, keep it short, keep it pithy, keep it. Yeah, you can do that, but also people do appreciate when you can actually elaborate on what your talking points are. And that's what I
Well,
did.
I
And go ahead.
well, I think, just to build on what you're saying, because this is an education show, and so we're merging these together. And you have to think really like the Marxists do, because if you uneducate people, I mean, which is what schools are doing, and then with the infusion of social media and apps and that kind of stuff, where we're all interested in who made what for dinner, but we don't really care to know how the government functions, even though it's interacting in with our own lives. I mean, that's part of what you do to a society. That's part of how you ruin a society, is you make it so that people can only take in information in 15-second bites. I mean, and that's all that they can do. And a consultant wants to reach the most amount of people. And because the most amount of people anymore are miseducated or undereducated and can only absorb information in 15 seconds, then you get what you get, which are these mailers that are just calling names and being, I mean, for lack of a better word, I mean, ambulance chaser type, look at headlines, type mailers that do exactly what you're saying. Don't, they don't educate at all. They're just trying to get people to have an emotional response to vote, and that's all they're doing. So, I mean,
Right.
good
And I
point
think
there.
that is so disrespectful and
Absolutely.
to the voter. And so I want to throw this in there, because I lost by 206 votes in the runoff. And this race was different, because if you eliminate a certain factor, it's gonna look, this race is gonna look different. I'm not gonna say I would have won. I'm not gonna say I would have had more votes or anything, but I can tell you it would have looked different. But there were so many rumors and false things that were being spread about me within the town that I live in, that is the heart of this district, that when these mailers came, people, they were inundated. I was outdoor knocking, and people would be getting their mail, and there would be 3 mailers about
Yes.
me in the same day.
Yeah.
And I got a little newspaper explaining all of it, but what I heard from people was that I am just so tired of all of this. And not one of my pieces had anything slanderous or anything. It had factual. We did our research of where these things were coming from, and we didn't pin it to the other candidate. We pinned it to these dark money groups. But who were they dropping these mailers against? Me. And so what we believe took place in this district, because we had less people show up to the runoff than showed up to the primary, is that it suppressed the vote. What is the word that I'm looking for? People were
made them
burnt out.
tired. Yeah.
They were burnt out. They were tired of the so-called drama. None of it came from me except for what people thought about me. That I'm part of a cult, that I have felonies, that I'm a rhino, that, I mean, you name it. They were from all ends of the spectrum. Yeah. And I was talking with one lady, and she brought up that accusation. She started off pretty hostile, but we ended up being able to have a great conversation, because I just was like, hey, I want to answer your questions. Like, I'm not who they said I was. I'm not offended. So let's talk. And we did. And she said, well, aren't you a part of this religious cult? And I said, well, if I was. And she said, because I've seen you on CARE, the Islamic whatever thing, which they do a whatever you call it, a brochure that lists all of the candidates, and just kind of, what their policy. My opponents were all on it too, but she brought this up. And so what's circulating in the town is that I'm a part of this religious cult. And then you have this CARE thing out there. And so people are like, well, do you support them? And I said, if I was a part of that kind of a religious cult, I wouldn't be at your door, because I'm a woman. And she was kind of like,
well, there is that.
And then I said, and if I was a part of this other zealous, whatever, religious Christian cult, I still wouldn't be at your door, because I'm a woman. And she was like, oh. And so every accusation, the truth that I had just kind of neutralized it. And I was like, where are you getting this stuff? And she said, oh, the ladies that I play bunco with. And I said, have any of them ever bothered to ask me any questions? No, they don't. They just go by what someone with a grudge has shared. And while I do live with a number of my friends in a large house, when we do ministry together, it's like we don't have any rules or anything like that. And people come and go from our house all the time, and but who bothers to ask these questions and find out the truth? And so it's just, those rumors started from a disgruntled group that had a hold in this particular area, and they were very small, but they knew enough people who get caught up in the gossip. And what do? You're afraid of what you don't know. And if it finds out that what you do know isn't true, then for a lot of people, that's hard to overcome in pride and in just the paradigm that has been developed. I mean, there's just a lot of psychological factors that you do have to accept in certain races, and this is obviously one of them, because the highest turnout was my own precinct against me. And that's where the heart of all these rumors started. But I that's not something I discuss a lot of the time, but it is a highly relevant factor. And those are the things too that you've got to understand are going on before this. I understand the psychological aspect of human relationships and leadership and all of that. I've seen it. I mean, I've obviously learned about it. And these politicians go by it. And when I was talking about that groupthink with these flyers, they capitalize on it. And when you look at how they're spending their money, it's almost like, as I'm going through this, it's almost like I can catch the attitude of, if, like, I door knocked so that I could be voted for, and they get money so that they can dump all of these mailers in there and not have to door knock.
That's exactly, that's an excellent point. That is an excellent
so that
point.
they can do what they want, play the game, ride the high life. I mean, it came at me as like the thought that I believe that most of them who did start off door knocking, It's like, I can't wait to get in so that I can get all this money and never have to do this again. And I was like, holy cow, that's what it is. And they get caught up in it in the fancy hotels, and everything's paid for, whether it's their campaign money or lobbyist gifts taking them out. And because that is the thing, is all of that is consolidated into one building, and it is that environment. And the less that these politicians get out in their district and meet with these people, the more that they get sucked into that. And it's so tempting. And obviously, as believers, you know, we say this, but how much do we really understand it? We don't wage war against flesh and blood, but against powers and principality. Greed, selfishness, arrogance, narcissism, all of those things are of that nature. And that's actually what we're up against. And it touches people. And so this has nothing to do with this candidate, but that what has pulled him in and sucked him into thinking that this is what makes him a man, or this is what makes him a good man, or this is what makes him a powerful man. That's what we're actually up against. And it's you can just see it all here. And yeah, so as you continue on the website and this conservative rating,
we're about an hour in, so let's go ahead and go see what other slide, if you can get through them.
Okay, yeah, I can get through the rest
your
pretty
information
quick.
is awesome. Okay.
This is the conservative rating according to the Oklahoma Constitution. That's where Steve Bias, Ron McWhorter, and a number of great conservative patriots do a scorecard, and it's phenomenal. So this is this guy's rating, and you can click, not on this PowerPoint obviously, but that's a link. The Oklahoma Constitution scorecard is a link, and it'll take you to that website that has the actual scorecard, and you'll see this is not an abnormality. This is not an anomaly, this score right here for a Republican. This is actually pretty average. And then it has the lifetime score as well. And so you can go ahead and go to the next slide. This is one of the bills that was chosen to be highlighted. I listed 10, and I do provide commentary on these bills, and you can click on the title or the bill number, and it'll take you straight to the bill itself. You can click on bill, it'll do that. You can click on votes, and you'll see everyone's votes. And then I attached the legislator. This one in particular is obviously Chris Kennedy. And you'll be able to see on record his vote for it. And I made it easy on the eyes. So in red, I highlight what the conservative vote is. And if it's a conservative vote, down in the bottom where it says yes or no, I made that red too. But this bill, this commentary discusses, or actually highlights, the politics that went into this vote. And so he is now held to the previous superintendent's funding, federal funding, who was a Democrat. And it includes a federal grant that requires the development of a mental health app that could be used by these liberal educators to push students into the gender affirmation care. And these were Republican legislators that voted to do this. And there is an obvious attack on Ryan Walters right now. And so I thought it was very critical to highlight this, because his own party and the legislators are thwarting the will of the voters who placed him in office in discussing, this impeachment. And the Daily Oklahoman has written a number of articles that highlight, things about his campaign that I see are par for the course with these guys. Do you know how many times that they file late and they willingly pay the fees? Yeah. It is a strategy that so many of these legislators use, and yet the Daily Oklahoman is targeting him. And the Tulsa school board member, I forget her name. It starts with an A.
Alina,
and
Ashley.
yeah, and saying that, oh, there's corruption in their campaign, and it's like, no, this is what they all do. And if they would do their due diligence, then they would eliminate half of the Republican legislators in office just based on ethics alone. At least, you know, if they tried, or maybe not eliminate them, but they'd make a lot of money in fees, you know. Instead, they pick and choose, and who could be behind that but the sitting legislators that don't want him, who are beholden to the OEA and the NEA. Because I mean, you'll see patterns there as well. So you can go ahead and go on to the next one. And then this is, I list out all of the bills authored by the legislator, and the ones in red are the bills that have substance, and then the ones in navy blue are shell bills. And that can be a tool, that can also be a political maneuver. So a shell bill is a bill that just has a title, no body, no substance. And so they will file them, and they're like placeholders, or they're there to appease their constituents. So say one of his constituents said, I think you should do something about some veterans issue. And he said, okay. So he throws in a bill with a title, and that constituent comes back, and this guy can say, well, I'm working on it, and never do anything about it. But he's got it there. Right. So if this guy asks for it, he can show him this. But then it dies in 2 years. And so he still gets that guy's vote. The guy thinks that he's working on it when he's just been fooled and used, and he's just a number, and he's never going to do anything about it. And so then over in the other column, that is the number of bills and the bills themselves. All these are linked that actually got passed. And so what I found on the old legislator website is they would just stack and list every bill that was authored by them. And I would go through every single one of them, and about half of the ones that they listed changed authorship. And the person who was originally on there was not on there any longer. And so it made them out to be this so influential legislator who just has so many bills authored and works so hard. And I'm like, no, that's kind of the intentionality behind this section, is to demonstrate the truth. And so the actual work are the ones in red, and the ones that get through are on the right. Because there's such an image that is created about these people, and it starts in their campaign phase with their campaign consultants, and then it's maintained through the media, and whether that's their own website, their government website page, or their own campaign page, or what the news outlets don't say about them, and then what they do say about them, and then what their connections who want them to stay in say about them, and the mailers that go about them saying, oh, thanks for all these conservative votes, when they only highlight 2. That's how it's kept up. And this just rips it off for you to examine for yourself and say, do I want that person working for me anymore? Right. And you can make that decision yourself. And if it was up to me, I'd say about 90% of these people would be gone. But that is the legislator profile that I've been working on, and I'm going to be adding things to it as well, providing a little bit more commentary so that certain voters can more quickly understand what they're looking at. I want it to be as user-friendly as possible and as educational as possible. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. This is what the future looks like. I will be doing the state representatives, state senators. I'll be doing the governor and other elected officials. I'll be doing state judges. That'll be the Supreme Court, Civil Court of Appeals, the Criminal Court of Appeals, district judges, associate district judges. I'll be doing our congressional delegation, and that's going to be further on down the road. I feel it's most imperative to do our state elected officials, and I'll there's a tab that says headlines. I'm going to be in like kind of how Drudge Report did. I'll be daily doing headlines that are from various outlets throughout the state. They may be liberal, they may be conservative, but just how before he either sold the paper or he went left, how he would describe the article with his words and skip the liberal spin. That's what I'm gonna do. And so, for example, coming out the gates, I may just do the whole barrage that all the Tulsa World and the Oklahoman are doing about Ryan Walters, so that the viewer can see their obsession with him and what all of the legislators who are against him saying, oh, he's waging a cultural war. These things aren't happening in Oklahoma. And then you can see their names, and then you'll be able to go to their profiles and see how tied in with the teachers unions they are. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But you can go ahead and go to the next page. And this is what the state judges page is
Wow,
going to
that
look like.
is impressive.
So that's a flow chart showing how the court system, where things begin and where they end up. And then there's a little bit of a description to kind of explain it. And this is just public from the oscn.org or .net. And then I have all of the justices' profiles, and I put banners up to tell you when they're up for a retention vote. So you'll see that on the page. And I have bios for them that I'm still kind of playing around with. What I included in those bios, and I just said this at the Logan County GOP, is they make decisions and they have opinions, and those come from their worldview. Now, we like to pretend that they are impartial and nonpartisan, but what we've seen in these years are activist judges, and those are at the national level. But power is power, and people are people.
They're also at the state level too.
They are also at the state level, and I side note, I would talk about this a lot at the door, is if you can have power politics at a church, why do people think that doesn't happen at the state level in our government and in our institutions? And they were just kind of like, because they would ask me, where does your political experience come from? And I said, well, I was on a sports team and I served in a church. And they just laughed. And then we were like, oh, wow, that's pretty accurate. And so why would that not take place in our court system? And so in their bios, I include certain memberships that they're a part of, tribes, and other things.
Wow.
I do include their party. And Don Spencer just recently spoke about some legislation that he's wanting to work on that requires them to run as a bipartisan candidate. And I don't think that's a bad idea, because I was surprised to find out some of the Supreme Court justices that we have. I list what governor nominated them or appointed them, and the governor's party that appointed them and how long they've been up there. I list their bachelor's, their Juris Doctorate, and previous services and current services. We do have one particular justice that I do admire, and I think you will easily be able to figure that one out. I will also be including certain decisions that they've made in a quick summary, so that you will be able to make an informed decision on whether to retain or not. And I will be doing that for, like I said, all of the district judges and the associate judges, as well as the other criminal court of appeals and the other higher courts.
And so are you just doing all of this on your own time? I mean,
pretty
this
much
is just all, I mean, because
it
that
is.
is a lot of work.
It is, and it's fun. I like doing that kind of work. I do miss getting out and door knocking with the people, but that is something that I plan to do, is to go back around and say, you know what, I did lose, but that doesn't mean that I can't still do what I said I was going to do, and bringing transparency, and just empowering the people to step back into that place of authority, because I mean, that is what it is here in America. Is we're a constitutional republic, and yes, elected
We're not a
democratically,
democracy?
but we
What?
are not a democracy. And so many people that I talked to, that resonated with them, and it reminded them, but they just felt like, well, how can we do anything about it? And as I would share with them the information, I could just see the almost like scales falling from their eyes, of like, what have I done in allowing
Yeah.
this? And I clearly didn't reach enough people. But now I have the time to do that, and I have a very supportive husband who believes in what is going on, not just in America, but especially in Oklahoma. It's our home state, and he supports me to be able to do this more than full time. And I do believe that a team is being put together. Um, and so as this gets figured out, because right now it's hard to get other people to help, because I barely know how to do this. I'm figuring it out as I go along. It's basically blazing a trail, I guess you could say. And so even in the design and the presentation and all of those things, I've got to get it out there, and then get it consistent so that it can be easily replicated. And once that takes place, then it's just plug in, plug in, plug in, plug in,
Right.
and that will be something that a team can do. And so I do have some help that is wanting to come alongside of me, just getting it to the place where that can happen. Has been very it's been very hard. It's like hiking up a mountain over and over and
Well,
over with different resources.
and if I can make a suggestion, Carmen, one thing I would like, and maybe you already have this instituted, this could be kind of maybe on the back burner after you kind of get the whole political side, but I would like to see just maybe 2 links in their bios that go directly to the OSCN, the Oklahoma State Court Network, with their name as a defendant, just to see, you know, what kind of tickets they've had, you know, what kind of issues have they been involved with, what kind of lawsuits have they had to defend themselves against, or, you know, even be on the other side of that. But also you could link in there into the county clerk's website to the UCC and ROD searches to see, you know, do they have federal tax liens? How many bankruptcies have these guys had? You know, what are their other, you know, because that'll bring in all of their business dealings, you know, and it'll just kind of paint another clear picture of, you know, the way they conduct themselves in their community. Because a lot of people have no idea, you know, if you really start looking into someone through those types of public searches, I mean, you know, have they had VPOs in the past, or TROs, or you know, whatever. I mean, these things I think are important in making those decisions. And like I said, whether you're doing it now or not, you know, maybe in the future, that's another little aspect in the bio section of each one of these people you could link in and put that additional data in there.
I hear you. I love feedback, and if it aligns with this, then I will include it, and that does. And so, and it's funny as you say that, because part of my thinking in this is like, well, if they did it to me, then that's fair game. I'm not a vindictive person. I am a person of integrity. And so I will hold you to the standard that you operate by for your sake. And that
Yep.
is directly in line with that. They had to fabricate things about me.
Yeah.
And so I think that what you just said there is going to add more to the picture of these employees and that people would want to know. So I will incorporate that. Please text me so that I'll have that.
Yeah.
And I'll see about that. I bet that could happen when I get that team and we can add it in there. Getting some people to research those things and incorporate them into a little section that would include like media articles. It's kind of what I'm thinking. I was already going to add something along those lines. I think this would fit right in there. So that was a good advice. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, that's just things
Well, and
I
you
want to
know, it's
see. I want to know, about
yeah.
people in public office.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
It just that realistic with past news. Sean Merman, who was this, drag queen who's been the principal of a school in the Oklahoma City Public School District. He not only had a charge against him that was expunged that had to do with child pornography, he also had several wins with the law in terms and what he was and a drug charge essentially. So we should know things about people. We tend to vote for them and then think because we're voting for them, they're great people. Like you said, you need to know way more about what you voted for.
Yeah,
right. And it's gonna and that's the thing too, is I do include the contact information, and people like Mark McBride who are waging this war against Ryan Walters need to be asked about, well, so what about Western Heights drag queen principal?
Wow.
Because you're saying that he's waging a culture war, and it's needless, it's unnecessary, and it's controversial. But that's not when he's been charged and narrowly got off. Those are the things that should enrage people, and not what the media says. But I also think that people are starting to see through even our state media establishment. But that is something that the curtain's going to be pulled back on them as well. So there's going to be a lot of facets to this website that are just going to blow people away, and I only probably shared about half of them.
Yeah. Well, I think you're a phenomenal person in everything that you've done, especially just to help open people's eyes. Because honestly, Karmin, I think, if it's a one-on-one battle where they're actually going door to door, just like you, winning the hearts, winning money in your district, there's no competition. The grassroots are always going to win. But when you have this outside money and just propaganda after propaganda, and unfortunately, I'll put some of the blame on the voter, because we live in that instant society, in that instant time where people get one piece of information, they make their decision, and that's it. So when you're out there knocking 12,000 houses, but there's 40,000 mailers that have hit against you, that's kind of, it's an unfair fight. And it's complete just political propaganda is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sorry my internet connection has been so goofy today. I'm starting to believe that maybe somebody's hacking into my stream because I wonder
Jenny,
who wouldn't want to know about. Yeah, I wonder who wouldn't want to know about dark money in Oklahoma. Gosh, there's nobody I can think of who doesn't want us talking about this, Karmin.
Yeah, and I will say this is
and here's our friend Alina.
Hey, shout out.
Shout out, Alina. And you talk about somebody who. Go ahead.
As I pay attention to the state, and when I see a fellow patriot and what an Oklahoma patriot and an American patriot, obviously. And when I see something that's going on with them, rest assured that I will help them in some way. And so I have already been looking at how to lend Elena a hand. And I think that she will really appreciate it. So any of the grassroots out there who would like some assistance running in a campaign or whatever, just reach out. There's a number of people who know me that I'm sure that you would know that I would be willing to speak with and to share some counsel or data. But this is a thing that is bigger than all of us.
Yeah.
And when I saw what was really going on and knowing, who I am and what I can contribute, there was no other choice. I wanted to do this. And this is for absolutely every Oklahoman out there. Because people don't know what they don't know. And when they do, I like to give them the benefit of the doubt and that they would make the right decision. And granted, I'm sure this is going to more than ruffle feathers, but I believe that in numbers there's strength and that truth endures. And that is really what this is. It is about the truth, and it is about informing the people and restoring that authority. And that is something that transcends any one individual. And so if there is an individual out there who is a candidate or in a position that feels isolated because of what they're up against in that, there's help out there. And you don't have to go to the establishment and get those strings attached. And there are 2 people right here in Jenny and Michael, and there are hundreds more. So Elena, I want to encourage you that there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes, and that you are in the mix of being thought of as needing support. And so just I hope that encourages you, and I hope this encourages every individual voter in the state. But this is only the beginning of a humongous movement that I believe has the potential to alter the political landscape of Oklahoma. But that just depends on if people are interested or not.
Well, I
So.
think there's going to be, I think there's always going to be a faction of people. I mean, when you look at the number of people who actually vote in elections, I'm doing a little research article right now on school board elections and who votes in school board elections, particularly bond elections, because to me that's really huge, because a bond actually places a well, it prevents you from owning your own property. It adds to your property taxes, and it's huge. And I think the problem we have today, well, they're myriad, but when we find good information like yours, we've got to share that with others, and we've got to stop people from thinking that our elected officials are somehow better than us and we can't talk about them and we can't hold their feet to their fire. And it's like you talking about Mark McBride. Well, Mark McBride, I mean, he posted on his Facebook page regularly. It's all public that he gets, awards from teachers unions. And, you've got to look at that in the scheme of who that person is and what he's saying about Ryan Walters. And I'm sick of not talking about people's names. If you want to behave badly, if you want to, behave partisanly, if you want to do that kind of thing, we need to just continue to call these people out and hold their feet to the fire, because there's nobody else that's going to do it. And we are going to share your information as soon as your website goes live. We may have you back on for like a 15-minute thing or something to talk about it and get everybody on to your website, because people have got to get on and share the information. I mean, that's what they've got to do.
Right. And like I said, I think I said this is the first real actual public moment I've had with this. But when it's live and I am certain that the data is accurately updated, I will be naming names and there won't be any more vagueness, because we can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how effective Rush Limbaugh was, Candace Owens, all of these people, and James O'Keefe, and all of these national patriots. Where are they in Oklahoma? And they are starting to come together. And I can, well, I'm looking at two of them as well. And they are, but we are starting to come together, and we're not going to hide behind compromise anymore. Or there is so much courage that is coming to the influential, or the people who have experienced and leadership is taking place, and not necessarily in terms of titles, but just in terms of people who are like, hey, I can do this. I have knocked so many doors. Michael Grande ran a campaign. You know how to go up to a door and say, are you aware of da, 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 da? Like, just the empowerment that has come from the number of people who have had the experiences that we have had, and we are saying absolutely no more. And that's growing. And what we are willing to do is to go back out there and campaign again in whatever way that we have to, whether it is for an office, or whether it's for an organization that we created, or whether it's just in getting the information out. Like, I'll knock 30,000 doors if I have to tell people your legislator is corrupt. Yeah. Because this is about future generations.
Yeah.
And what we experienced in 2020, like I said, the lockdowns, the masks, the jabs, like, how many miscarriages have there been because of that policy, or that fake policy, that emergency inaction, or whatever you want to call it, that lockdown and all of those rules. It's ridiculous. And people have to start seeing this for what it is. And it actually is life and death. And it's more than abortion now. It is the fake vaccine that has not been tested long term, that we are now seeing the deaths from. That I do believe that. It's strange how many young people are dying of heart whatever complications, and how many miscarriages there's
or
been.
Elderly people who suddenly get a blood disease that they've never had before.
Right.
I don't know anything about that. So here's what I want to say, because unfortunately we're going to have to end. It's 1:33. I just can't tell you thank you enough for what you're doing. I mean, what you're doing, and people have got to understand what Karmin has done here is huge.
Yeah.
This is no small undertaking. This is hours and hours and weeks and months and years of collecting data. Michael and I have done this stuff before. We know exactly what we're talking about. You have got to appreciate the amount of time this woman has put in on this project, and you got to use it. You got to follow us so that when she goes live, you can use that website. But there are super important elections. There's a presidential election in 2024, but there are all kinds of other local, state, House, and Senate races as well. You've got to be informed, and this is the way to do it. So God bless you, Karmin, for what you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you for your support and all of your help.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate it.
I didn't help you at all. You did all of this by yourself.
We've had good conversations that have been very helpful. So I consider that.
Okay, that's nice to know, but you did all of that. I'm not taking any credit for that. You did all of that. So again, thank you. But seriously, when it goes live, please make sure you get in touch, back with us, and then we'll go ahead and do like a special report or whatever that we need to do so that we can get that information out, because we are finding that these videos are getting shared a lot better than stuff that, I've actually written. Sigh. Um, but whatever it takes, we'll do it. So, let us know. And Alina, God love her, is saying thank you all. And she's the one who's taking the biggest amount of
Yeah.
fire, I think. So I thank you, Alina. My goodness. I don't know why you're thanking us. You're the one that seemed to be taking all the bullets. A 3-minute prayer over a graduation that people had done for generations before, and they want to skewer her at the stake. It's ridiculous where we
Or
are.
for her
So
money.
yeah,
That's funny. That's a funny thing too. They're coming after her for her money. Ah, if only these people knew where. Just
it's
makes me
just
laugh.
but it's ridiculous. But again, if we don't let the people know who aren't paying attention, we're never going to get anywhere. And this is the best way to do it. So, Karmin, thank you so much for being on with us today. I can't tell you thank you enough, and how much you should be lauded for the amount of your own time that you're putting into doing this. So, God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too.
Well, and thank you for being with us today. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Jenny. See you, Michael.
All right.
Thanks,
All
Karmin.
right. Bye-bye. That was an amazing interview with an amazing woman who is doing amazing things. And if people think that I wasn't, I mean, that I was being like hyperbolic about how much effort she's put in on this, you're crazy. Because
yeah.
that's just an unbelievable amount of effort that woman has put in. And she should be put up for some kind of an award, because she's doing what journalists should be
yeah.
doing. This is years ago what journalists used to do.
Yeah.
Where are the journalists?
Yeah. Where's Nondoc? Where's Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Where's, where are these hard-hitting people that,
Yeah.
have no problem coming after us, coming after
Yep.
me, coming after you, coming after Karmin, Ryan, whoever,
Yep.
it just shows you how political it is. But I go back, Jenny,
It is.
to, like the godfather of public relations, the godfather of propaganda, Edward Bernays. I don't know if you've ever read his book.
I have not. Tell me.
You need to read his book, and it will explain today's society without, I mean, he's the guy that got women to smoke cigarettes. I mean, he is the mastermind of literal propaganda. I mean, and his book's not even that long, but it's called Propaganda. It's Edward Bernays.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to write it in here. Edward, is it Bernays like the sauce?
Well, it's Bernays.
Nays. Okay, that's
Edward
interesting.
Bernays,
And it's called
Propaganda.
Propaganda.
Yep. Even just the first couple paragraphs, you're just like, it's just complete psychological manipulation. It's just complete, just over the top, repetition. I mean, everything that kind of our today's society is built on, it comes from this guy in one way or another. I mean, this guy, I mean, he literally well, we don't even need to go into it, but most of our lifestyle today was created with corporations, selling products, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and this guy was the heartbeat of all of it.
Well, honestly, we've been bought and sold down the river of propaganda honestly, since the turn of the 18th century for sure.
Yeah.
And at like 1920, it just got super bad. I mean, that's kind of when they made the huge push, and we're bringing over, the German communists, and, people just need to read history because they're not getting it taught in public school, but they should read that, because that's when everything really started to go to hell in a handbasket. And probably when we lost the US was in the 1920s, and people don't even really realize it's gone. They're just like, but there's something wrong. And I'm like, well, because we don't have a country based on a constitution anymore, because case law threw it off, and we don't really have a money supply that's worth anything. And I mean, it just goes on and on. But the point of the matter is the only reason why you and I do this is because we just want to educate other people, right?
Well, but I've told you multiple times, if I don't engage and do this, then I'm complicit in everything that's happening. And I don't want to be complicit anymore.
Yeah.
I've been part of the problem for a long time because I was just a regular guy, had my head down, working hard, trying to provide for my family, not paying attention to all this. And now it's steamrolled us. So
Yeah.
if I don't do something and act, then I'm complicit. I'm not going to be complicit.
Yeah. Well, and yeah. Yes. Okay. I think we're done for today. But I will say who we have on for next week. And I do want to remind everybody, hey, I've been revamping our website. I have a fly that's I just feel like this whole the whole show has been me fighting off things. I don't know what's going on here, but I feel like that's demonic something. Anyway, so we have our Patreon account. Go to our website. I've really been working on it, adding a lot more information. And I am going to put Karmin's information on our website when she gets it all ready to go. It will be up there.
And I hope Karmin has a contribution page or some way to help with
gosh,
some
I
of the
do too.
expense of that also. I hope she kind of
Hold on a second. She's still under there. She's still watching us. So do you have a way people can donate to you?
I
This
will
is
have
what you get for staying there.
I will have a way to do that on my website, yes. And some of the things that I've still am trying to figure out are more the legal side of it, on the best way to structure so that I can receive those. So there will be a way, because I will need that.
No
Be
joke.
very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so see you again. Bye-bye again. She's so awesome. So yeah, she will have that on there too. So go to our website, and on the donate page, it's donate. You can just see it at the bottom. I have it set up where you can donate to us, and we've gotten some really sweet donors lately, and thank you guys who have donated to us. I just can't thank you enough. It's meant a whole lot, and we did get our WordPress site paid for the year. So God love you to all of you who donated. I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. So thank you very much. But our Patreon is linked on that donate page. And if you'd like to join our Patreon, we'd love to have you. We will be talking to Dr. Robert Mather about our interview with T.S. Smith and gender affirming care in mental health crisis in Oklahoma after our podcast today. And so next week we are going to have oh my gosh, this should be so interesting. We're going to have Lori Tuggle, who is a person who actually lived out of the country for quite a number of years as a I believe she was teaching English, and also doing some missionary work. I couldn't think of the word missionary. I'm sorry. And she's come back, and she ran for her, like Michael, she ran for a seat on her school board and had the same thing happen to her that happened to Michael, but you'll love to hear what she has to say. Also on the 29th, so next Friday, you guys are really going to want to tune in for sure. Our V1 SUT blogger, the one that's brought you the information about Sean Mernon, the principal, drag queen principal at Western Heights Public Schools, she will be on with us on Friday. So you'll want to see her and, kind of get a little bit more information and find out about, how she collects some of this information and what she does. She's really one of the best bloggers that we have out there. So, and if you want to see her, she's on V1 SUT at Substack. She has a Substack. So thank you so much for being with us, Michael. Anything to close this out?
Well, I'm so thankful for people like Karmin, and that actually, not just people like Karmin, but Karmin herself, that she is taking it upon herself to shine the light where it needs to be shown in this state on how bad and corrupt and how behind the scenes all these things are. So I'm so thankful to Karmin for that.
Me too, because I think the best way, you and I always say we're not a red state. and
Yeah.
we're not a part of the Bible Belt anymore. And people just cannot get that through their thick heads. But I'm really hoping that with Karmin's information and they see it in front of them and they have to confront that, then maybe they'll change their minds and that will boost them into activism. So
Yep.
you're exactly right. All right. Well, good to see you again, Michael. Always love being on with you. And we thank Karmin again. And we will see you again on Wednesday of next week at 9 a.m. And then follow us on Patreon, where you'll get to see our interview with Dr. Robert Mather. So thank you very much. And bye-bye.